Hi, and welcome to another session of Selector Pro Music Forum. My name is Dartsya Tarkovska. I'm a co-founder of Music Expert Ukraine, and I will be your moderator for the next session. So we are going to talk about hate on web and how to deal with that. And don't get me wrong, internet is amazing. It brought us a lot of wonderful opportunities and tools. But being an artist or working in the music industry, one day you wake up, you pick up your phone, you scroll through your feed, and all of a sudden you feel like the whole world hates you. It may be because of the latest song that you made, your video, post, comment. No matter what, you may feel like your devoted fans are turning into haters. And how to react, how to process these kind of specific emotions. We will try to tackle this topic as much as we can. I'm very pleased to have amazing guests to join us in terms of this panel. That would be Jyoty, Anastasiya, Vera, and Ellie. And I will allow our speakers to introduce themselves. So let's do a quick round of introduction, if you don't mind. Jyoty, would you like to start?
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Jyoty, and I'm a broadcaster, curator, and DJ based from Amsterdam, based in London. And I talk a lot on the internet, which I guess is why I'm been invited on this panel. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Amazing. Pleased to have you, Anastasiya.
Oh, hello. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Anastasiya. I'm from Kyiv, Ukraine. I'm a head of PR and Ukrainian musical label Masterskaya, and I'm PR agent of Ukrainian artists named Yu. And we had a very interesting experience with the hate on the web, and I would like to tell all I have.
Amazing. Looking forward to that. Ellie, you're next.
Hi, I'm Ellie Giles. I run a company called Step Music Management. I've been managing for around about 10 years. I'm in therapy, so I have an understanding of resilience and kind of looking after oneself. I'm also opinionated on Twitter about certain things. So that's probably why I've been invited onto here as well.
Amazing. Therapy team. Yay. Vera, you're next.
Hi, I'm Vera Kravchenko. I'm a Gestalt therapist based in Kyiv. I'm a little bit shy to be here, to tell you the truth, because I have very little to do with the music industry. But I do have some insights and some thoughts on hate as a phenomenon, as a psychological and emotional process. So I'll be glad to share what I have on that.
Amazing, Vera. Very glad to have you on board. You will cover our backs with theory and we're with practice.
Thanks for having
ladies,
me, yes.
Before we actually begin, I think it makes sense to try to define hate as it is, because let's be honest, not everything that we don't like on the internet should be considered as hate. So how can we distinguish what is good criticism and what is actually hate? And this one goes to all of you, so feel free to jump into the conversation whenever you're ready.
I use Twitter, and Twitter is probably one of the biggest formats for hate, I think. But I think it's really important to remember the difference between the two, which is someone questioning your opinion and your thought, and someone hating for no reason but you being solely on this earth. And I think that has to be a very clear delineation. And unfortunately, some people don't have that delineation in their heads. So they believe that they're being attacked when actually it's someone actually questioning them and challenging their thought. I think it's really important to remember as well that, it's not attacking you when they question you as a person, like your thoughts. I think that's really important. But if they say anything about gender, race, anything in that world, that is hate. So I think it's really important to clear them two lines because they're very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. Jyoty, would you like to follow up on this one?
Yeah, actually, I agree with what Ellie is saying. I think I've learned over the past few years that a comment or a remark that leads into a conversation and leaves space for conversation is not hate. It could be really difficult. It can make you question yourself, but it's not hate. I've caught myself having to apologize to certain people in my DMs, sometimes privately, sometimes publicly, because I would feel very attacked. But the more I am becoming fluent in doing it so myself, in asking people, commenting on people, especially when you personally know them and you know your intention is not to bully them or to hurt them, but it's to, you don't agree. And this is something I'm learning more and more, that even the people closest to me, we don't have to agree, but that doesn't mean we dislike each other. And so by having to explain myself to others, I'm now also learning that that's what a lot of people meant when they sent me certain messages. And I think you can often tell, but not always, but I think this happens through practice, is not everyone's out to hurt you and make you upset. Some people just need answers and need clarification. And it's good to keep those two apart.
Yeah, I totally agree on that, especially when it comes to your closest friends and soulmates. Because I had this kind of conversation the other day. A friend of mine told me, "Do you hate me?" All over a sudden, that came literally out of nothing. And I was like, "No, why?" And he was like, "You're not using emojis for some reason." I know.
You have to use emojis if you want people to know you're not upset. Unwritten rule.
I know, right? So that's rule number one. Use emojis. Either way, I wonder if you remember the first time you had to face the actual hate on the internet, and what was your main takeaway out of that? Maybe it wasn't you, it was your artist. So, Nastya, would you like to proceed on this one?
Actually, yes, I have my artist Yulia, and my conclusion is when you think that you are ready for this hate, you know that you will have this hate. You're not ready. You even just don't understand what is it? We had, I can just tell you all the case. Maybe you're interested in this. Yulia was in the band, Ukrainian folktronical band named Yuka. It was very electronical music, but then she decided to move on and to build her own career in a very different way. It was from electronical to pop, and from the Ukrainian vibe and all these patriotic things to just pop and provocative and sexy. We understood that hate was predictable, but that old fans will not accept the new Yulia's music. But we did not expect it would be such a big hate, especially from fans, because our fans became our haters. And it was it was the most difficult thing, because Yulia was very supportive to them. Yulia always communicated with them on direct messages, voices messages, even just face to face. And then there were lovers, and they became haters, and it was very painful for us. And we did not expect this. And, we thought that it was okay. But several months after that, we understand it was not okay, because Yulia had some mental issues. Yes, our experience, you think that it's okay, but it's not. Because Yulia we thought she was lazy. I tell you the truth. We thought she was lazy and something's going on, but we didn't understand what it is. In several months, we just asked her even I can say forced her to go to psychologist after the psychiatrist, and now she's on her medicine, and she are going through depression, clinical depression. I have to tell you that not only hate on the web causes this depression, because there are a lot of things. But we cannot deny that it was a very big stressful thing for her. And we had some experience that our media, Ukrainian media, wanted to go to do the interview with her and to talk about all this hate thing. And we decided not to do this. Before she get through the medical all this thing, to support her as we can. It's our thing.
Which is crazy, because on the outside, your artist, Yu, she's constantly smiling with a happy face, and it's like double pressure on her. So yeah, that's quite an experience. Ellie, Jyoty, do you personally remember your first time dealing with hate on the internet? What were the outcomes of that?
My earliest memory is actually, it was quite intense. I was new on Rinse, the radio station I've been on for 6 years now. And when I was new on the station, I mean, no one knew me. I had a following. Numbers are subjective. I just want to clarify that from the start. So obviously I'm just talking about my peers compared to my peers on the station. My social media and my listener numbers were really low. I was a baby. However, there was someone constantly tuning in to my shows and then commenting afterwards on both the SoundCloud recordings and my social media. And I could tell that a lot of these comments were as if this person has met me before or knows of me. And they were really personal things. And it would always lead back to me not playing the music of a friend who would send me music, which I just thought, how can you be angry about that? Because I always say, hey, I play what feels good in my tummy. And even if it's my friends, I don't play all my friends' songs because I don't like them all. And one day this person decided to send me a picture of myself outside the studio. And so this was a fella who had actually taken the next step. And because the old Rinse studio was so iconic, it was where all the grime ciphers were recorded, where all the big dubstep recordings were. Everyone knew the Brick Lane studio. And I ended up having to tell Genius, the station founder, what was happening. And he took matters into own hand and I think started privately messaging this guy. And that's my first memory. And it was immediately one that went really extreme. So I always kind of have that as a reference point, to the point where 3 days ago I decided to stand up for someone else on my social media, a young DJ who's just popping now in the UK scene. I taught her how to DJ 3 years ago, so I consider her my child. And I thought it was time to publicly address someone who had been bullying her to the point where she was mentally feeling unstable. And before I did so, and I outed this person's account, I had to ask her, do you think he could do actual damage? Like, do you think this is, because I will always have that in the back of my mind. Is this someone who could look at when I'm playing next in London and show up, or look at when you're playing next in Brighton and show up to your gig? And I think that's always something I have in the back of my mind because of something that happened 6 years ago.
Wow, I feel like each of us have like some sort of unique experience, because when it comes to my memories, I faced hate a couple of years ago when I implemented one of the music projects here in Ukraine. And I vividly remember that I was shocked that there are some people on the internet who think that I'm a bad person. Because, like, why would they be so mean? And I thought, and that was like the big thought of mine, that I need to persuade them that I'm good. I need to explain my situation, and I need to like prove that I'm good enough so that they would stop. And obviously I couldn't do that. And that was one of my main takeaways, that there are always some people on the internet who won't like what I do, and that's totally fine. But that was me trying to be rational, while emotionally it hurt like hell. So maybe this one will actually go to Vera. Why is this hurt so badly? Like, why do these mean comments are so hurting us?
I think it's because hate is a rather powerful process, and like from my perspective, hate is not a pure feeling. Like, we as kids, we as children, we're not born with hate. We can react to things with fear, with happiness, sadness, and anger. So those are the innate sort of hardwired feelings. And hate is a complex kind of thing, which is it's a powerful attitude, which and this power can be like, it can make us feel vulnerable. And hate, I don't know how about you guys, but personally, I take hate personally. It's easy to do that. And I often have to support myself with the idea that it's actually not about me. If someone tells me, fuck, I hate Vera, oh, I'm sorry, but maybe we're not allowed to curse here. So if someone tells me that they hate me, so my job is to take the time to make this, to distinguish that that a person is projecting something onto me. But if it brings me pain, if it's emotionally sort of destabilizing, then it is about me. But it's not about in the context of what this person is saying about me. Oh, Vera, you're a stupid, glass-wearing, silly therapist. But it's about, I don't know, maybe something from my childhood. Maybe I have some issues with rejection or acceptance within my family history or something. I don't know if I'm making sense in any way.
Yeah, you do. That makes perfect sense. And I actually remembered a story that I read somewhere about blue hair. Like a friend told his girlfriend, like, yes, you're dealing with hate, but imagine a person would come on a street and tell you, like, hey, I don't like your hair, like, why would you dye it blue? What would be your reaction? And she was like, but I'm blonde, I don't have dyed hair. And he was like, exactly, that's why it won't trigger you. You would simply think that he's strange. Whereas if he would approach you and say you're ugly, that would trigger you, because somewhere on the inside you feel like you're ugly, and that's how you're getting these kind of feelings. That's why it hurts you. So yeah, it's good to look on the inside the moment you deal with hate, right? Okay. I wonder if you have any thoughts on working with artists, and this one would go to Ellie for first and foremost, because you're working both with artists and producers, as far as I know. So imagine they're dealing with hate or with some negativity. You're not into it, but you feel their pain, their reaction. How would you support them? Do you have any tips or tricks how to react on that properly?
I think the key is listening and understanding, and active listening. A lot of managers don't actually have that skill, the ability to just sit and listen and be with someone. And it's something that in therapy, that's what therapists do. They actively listen. And and understanding it and reassuring, so someone doesn't feel like they're alone and feel like they're kind of unsupported. I have an artist who's very open about his mental health difficulties, and it's quite interesting because he's got a lot of mental health problems, but when he sees hate on the internet, he just he comes back with humor, because that's who he is. But you know, if there's something that's really triggering him, or something that's really affected him, or any of my gang, then you know, of course, that my job is to unpick it and help them unpick it. And then, you know, if I do feel that they need more support, then I'll say, look, would you consider therapy? But I have to say that I have got most of my gang into therapy just purely because I've done it and they've seen how it's helped me, and therefore they've gone, oh, actually, there's a value in this. So yeah, active listening. And active listening is a skill. It's something you can read up about, but it's about sitting with the unpleasant feelings that you're getting when people are bringing things to you, and learning to just let it kind of go and be with them rather than be with yourself, if that makes sense.
And that's how I wanted to double check this one with Vera, actually. Do you think it's sufficient enough when the manager recommends his artist to go to therapy, or should it be solely the artist's decision to do that?
I think the manager is absolutely free to make the recommendation. I mean, I'm positive that you cannot force anyone to go into therapy, and it will always be the decision of the client. And I guess sometimes it's important to let people know that it's an option and that it's available and that support is out there. And of course, then the person can make the choice. Sure.
I see. Nastya wanted also to follow up with you. Have you noticed that your communication with Yulia changed after this hate kind of began?
Yes, it was difficult period, and our communication was different. That's why you know, it was very, very strange, because it was not like she was sad or she was like a fighter, you know, she with a smile and everything is good, but we are close, and once she told me that she had panic attack. And that was all. I told her it's the end. I won't listen anything from you. You just need to go to a psychologist.
Okay, so we're on the therapy team here. If you feel like doing that, please do, because it's indeed a life-changing experience. But that's the internal part. So that's a very, very important one, but that's the internal part. That's the way you process kind of negativity you're dealing with. I also wanted to tackle the outer part. So, on the outside, how should you react? And I've been discussing this topic with a colleague of mine, and the recommendations are very different. Some say you should ignore, others say you should respond as much as you can. So what would be your tips and tricks how to deal with that? Jyoty, would you like to step in?
Yeah, sure. I would start off, and I know everyone will agree on this. There's no right or wrong. This is a personal and a very subjective topic we're talking about. I can only speak from my own experience, is that I have gone through a whole roller coaster of what works and where I am now. I have gone from talking to everyone and responding to everybody, also because my social media or online community is insane. It's beautiful. It's sometimes I'm just a bit like, why? How did this happen? I have people who everyday strangers who message me, confide in me. I get a lot of personal stories that are shared with me. Nothing to do with, I think their entry to me is the music thing, right? You've seen a set, you've heard a radio show. And then because I'm just so such a human. Like my Instagram is just my diary. I just talk about everything. I look a mess. Everything's filmed from this angle. You're looking at my nostrils. So it's real. You're always on FaceTime with me when you watch my Instagram, basically. And I just talk about everyday stuff, which also means that people share their everyday stuff with me. And when I hit on a specific topic, it could also be quite heavy. And when, especially like women I relate to send me really personal stuff, and every now and then. So compared to that, that's all beautiful and love and joy, right? And I think, as everyone agrees, every now and then you get something that's really nasty, and it's the 0.0001%, but it's the one thing you remember. You don't remember all the love messages you got, all the amazing emails. No one cares anymore. And I have really, through experience, made the transition from going to justify myself every time to realizing, and I live by RuPaul's slogan, if they don't pay your bills, don't pay them no mind. That doesn't mean that I only care about the opinions of people that could potentially in some way pay me, but it just means, for me, in a wider sense, that some people just don't like you and they're just waiting for one thing to hold on to. They already didn't like you from the start before you said that thing that they could use against you. And it took a really long time for me to realize, when you started going back and forth, it's like, you're not actually even trying to listen. You don't want to like me. You don't even want me to actually change your mind. And so what I've learned is that there's different things you can do. What works for me is I ignore everything that just looks silly, anything that looks silly. When I have the emotional capacity to do so, I do engage in conversation, only if I could use it as an example. So recently I had a woman DM me while I was in Dubai for work, that she was really disappointed in me because I always speak up for social justice and this and that someone like me would then go to a place like Dubai because of everything that's happened in the past. I thought that was really interesting, because I thought, but what about all the other work I do? I also have a job and I have bills to pay, and you're not paying my bills because I don't think you've ever come to a gig or subscribed to my Twitch. So quite easy for you to say that I should turn down this gig. It's also quite easy for you to say when you've never been somewhere. Started having a conversation. And then I noticed, I said to her, I'm actually letting you tear me down because, you're a woman. I see you have a family. I'm trying to be respectful, but maybe we just don't see eye to eye. And she kept going on and on and on. And then it turned into, I'm disgusted by you. I thought you cared, but clearly you don't care enough. I'm going to unfollow you now. And then I said, you know what? I think maybe you shouldn't tell me as a brown woman how I should navigate this industry in another brown country where I can make decisions for myself on how I feel about this country. She proceeded to say, my whole family is Indian. Now, I had to screenshot this conversation and post it with blocking out her name on my Instagram, because this was a white woman married to a brown man speaking on a brown woman's experience, using her married into family as justification. Those type of instances, I will engage. Why? Because I want to then screenshot the convo, put it on my page to say, look, we can't do these things. It's really easy to be like this person, but look at the other end, da, 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 da. And then sometimes I have people saying, you shouldn't feed into this. And I always say, look, I only do it when it won't make me sad. It won't make me feel drained. And actually, 3 weeks later, this woman came around with her tail between her legs, apologizing. And not just a sorry, but an actual, she's read everything I said and have thought about it and come around. Sometimes when it's worth your time, reply. If it makes you feel better, I'm also petty at heart. I'm always honest about it. Yes, I'm trying to be an adult and I grow every year, but that doesn't mean my entire character or personality has changed. I feed off of being right. And I love it when people come around and say, sorry, I was wrong. So then that made me feel great. And then there's also the thing where you're never going to be liked by everyone. So always keep that in the back of your mind. And you need to also just know where your intentions lie and where other people's intentions lie. And you're just not going to win every fight. That was a really long essay, but I just wanted to make sure I covered all the different things I've tried. But I think the main thing for a lot of people, I would say, is not worth your time engaging in conversations with people who from the start have made it very clear that they don't want their mind to be changed. And that's going to save your peace of mind a lot.
What a story to tell, Jyoty. Wow.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Okay, I hope somebody from TED actually watching us. So you never know. And I actually wanted to do a follow up to Vera. If I choose to keep the conversation going and to react and be more involved into this conversation with potential hater of mine, what's your thought on this one? When should I stop? And should I actually begin? Like, just to save my sanity and my mental health?
It's kind of hard for me to answer this question, but I can identify with Jyoty's previous response that you have to. It's cool to be aware of your own resources, whether to begin or not to begin. Like, I would distinguish, how important the relationship between me and the potential hater is. Like, is this a person who actually knows me, or is this a person who is in contact with just an image of me or some kind of, perceived whatever. I'd say that's an important thing. And yeah, absolutely, there is no right or wrong. And whether to start and when to finish is, you can only identify that from the inside. Absolutely. And how important this person is to you. And from my perspective, an indicator is how much does this process of hate step upon my values. For example, I don't know, this is not about music, but for example, I'm a hater. I'm a hater of animal abuse, for example. So in a clash in this issue, I can sort of apply more resources than in a case where someone sends me a message saying, "Oh, Vera's a crap therapist," or, "Hey, have you seen her? That idiot." So yeah.
Okay, so you can decide individually. So with that keeping in mind, Nastya, what was your tactics when it comes to the hate? And did it change over time? Because I know right now, each time you releases new songs, there's always a little bit of backfire. So there are still some people who remember the way it used to be.
We decided to ignore, first of all, but then I know that Yulia, anytime she wants to reply, she does it. That's all our tactic, because maybe sometimes it will be better to answer and to forget about it. Maybe this way it will be easier to deal with it, because sometimes you need to continue to communicate, to explain your position. Because the communication is always a good choice. I'm the head of communication, I know this, but sometimes it's useless, as you told, because you don't have to tell anyone what do you think. It's just maybe it's not your target audience, and that's all. So now our artists in Masterskaya are free to do what they want, actually, If they want to respond, if they want to not to respond, they're free. So it's our tactics.
So basically, reacting or not reacting to some comments, that's the sole responsibility of the artist, not the PR section.
I can tell something that I think, but it's the artist's decision to listen to me or not to listen to me. That's all.
Okay. Okay. Ellie, do you have any opinions how to react publicly on some negative comments or?
I think what everyone said is exactly it. It's whatever you feel you're capable of dealing with at that point in time. I whenever I've encountered it, I just say, I'm really sorry you feel that way. That's one of my favorite ones. I'm really sorry you feel that way. I hope you're okay. Which kills them because they don't know how to react to it. Because they're being heard, but I'm not answering what they want me to answer, and I'm not fighting them. Because there's something deeper for them, unfortunately, that's going on. I feel sorry for them more than I feel anger for them. I'm just like, mate, and so yeah, and that's been my way of dealing with it. And sometimes you'll get response back, which is trying again, and you're like, well, okay, So yeah, I just feel very sad for a lot of these people that do it. But when you're on the end of real venom, my friend has been on real end of venom and had to take it to the police. Being told horrific things. That's another level, and I think that's when you really need to take it to the police and really need to take it to a further level. I think it's understanding them levels and understanding your capability of how you can deal with them levels, and whether you have the tools or not the tools. I think that's the key.
Well, none of you said that I should delete these comments, so I'm going to keep them where they are. Okay. Actually, this one brought me to another thought. I'm a huge fan of TikTok, I must confess, and I've seen some of the artists posting videos like, you're hating me, you're posting mean comments, but that actually feeds the algorithm. So the more you spread the hate, the more my videos are getting viral. Please keep on doing this, things like that. So keeping that in mind, do you agree that there is no such thing as bad hate? Like the worst reaction is zero reaction, and you can make lemonade out of any lemons.
I mean, Donald Trump's done a great job of that, so, and he understood that very well. He understood algorithm and how algorithm works. And, and that's the thing. It's, hate can spin algorithmically beautiful things and also terrible things. So, I think it depends on what that hate is, right? So if that hate is something that is just, that just looks shit, or what are you wearing pink for, then I think it's like, great, cool, carry on. But if it becomes personal and really nasty, then that's a different story. So yeah.
Jyoty, I saw you nodding. Do you have any stories to tell about TikTok and algorithms?
Absolutely. I'm a huge TikTok fan. It's my favorite app. The algorithm just knows me so well. And it's what Instagram was years ago. Remember when Facebook became like a nasty place? That's what Instagram is now. And now TikTok is our happy place. I've had the same thing. I've had videos eventually go viral because there was all these boys arguing in the comments on whether I was ugly or not. And then all these girls come into my defense. And I loved it. Go on. I grew up on 90s hip hop. I think, and I mean this, I come from a subculture and like a sub community where you haven't made it until give people, if people are gonna dislike you, you might as well give them a reason to dislike you, And it didn't take long before I realized that these little arguments or like nasty comments, which either I don't reply to or I reply to with, I agree. People also think that you don't read things, right? So sometimes it's good to give them a little scare when you do reply. Because people are so easy to do this because you can't see them. They're nowhere near you. So every now and then, you give them a little wink. Say, hey, I do see you. And you know what? I hate me too. And then they don't know. Then that's where you divide the cream from the crop, right? Who is a real bully? Are you going to leave it there, or are you actually going to come back? If they do come back, then that's where I then tend to leave it, because I'm not here to entertain any type of actual. You're not going to take up my time and my just happiness. But I have noticed that, whenever there's a video, funnily enough, it's never about my DJing. It's always about my looks, so that I care less about as well, because I get paid for DJing, not for my face. So these are all things you have to kind of for myself, I have to really analyze these things. I always take a second. Does this really matter? Is someone telling me I'm bad at the thing I love? No, it's something I can't change. Don't care. But that's another thing. We live in a time where all these tools are available to us for us to change things about ourselves. And a lot of these comments can get in your head and maybe make you do something that perhaps you wouldn't have done before reading these comments. So that's then takes us into another level, which Ellie kind of described. It's when the online, the URL becomes IRL, right? So you have to go to the police. You are getting cosmetic surgery, which is fine. But what drives you to do this? And I think that's the next thing. But yeah, listen, if they're hating on you, you're giving them something to talk about, and you're on their mind. They're not on your mind.
Yeah, I love that.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. That was another TED episode.
Wise.
Okay. I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to finish up this one with a rather opposite question, because sometimes it is us who are sitting on the internet and trying to provide some words of wisdom and feedback and comments to other content creators. And sometimes I just can't help but ask myself, am I the hater? Am I being am I behaving properly on the internet? So yeah, let's maybe keep a comment on this one. I don't know, Vera, maybe you have some tips and tricks how to properly provide the feedback on something you're seeing on the internet. How not to turn into an ugly hater.
Listen, this is a strange one for me, because one thing that helps me support myself in dramatic scenarios of hate is the knowledge that I am also capable of being hateful. Because otherwise, if I keep this stance like I am full of love and rainbows and I love the world and everything is perfect, then I'm wearing this white coat and I'm this anyway. That's not realistic in my idea. So I'm not sure I can give any advice on how to behave, but as a human being, I know that I sometimes get into some groups in specific topics, or I scroll through content on the internet, which actually it incites my hate. I'm like, oof. I mean, I definitely know that it's something that I'm capable of. So maybe I'm not a big helper on this one. And actually, I don't know, maybe you guys will hate me for this, but I would like to, I'd like to keep my right to hate things or processes which I don't agree with and that I dislike and which I think are detrimental. But maybe I've gone off the rails on this one. So if we can go back to the tricks and in terms of good behavior on the internet.
No, but I actually love it, because it's good to remember that you're not saint. So there's always a darker part of you who's also trying to react, and that's totally fine. Okay.
Sorry, one last one. I recently learned that love and hate the feelings of love and the processes in our brain are activated in the same zone of our neurology. So it's, it's close together.
Wow.
Okay, done.
No, that one is brilliant. Thank you, Vera. Ladies, do you have any wrapping thoughts on the topic that we had? Because I have a lot of takeaways, and I think that this is brilliant. I feel fine again. I must say.
I think it's just remembering we're all imperfect and apologising if we do step out of line, and trying not to shame someone. I think that's really important, even if you disagree with them, and try not to shame them, and so to challenge them and question them, but don't shame them, because I think that's a really different thing to do, because there's a lot of people who have shame that don't actually know they have shame, and you can contribute to their shame. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the best tweets I read all of last year helped me out a lot. And it said, your friends are not your fans and your fans are not your friends. And that changed everything for me. So I think that would be my little nugget at the end of this talk for people to just to sit with for a minute, especially if you're in the creative industries.
It's a great piece of advice. Love it.
Brilliant.
Wow, that's quite a thing to think about. One of my takeaways out of this topic was that if I'm willing to respond to a comment or write a comment of my own, I must be sure that I'm ready to say this line in line in real life. Unless I'm not, I probably shouldn't make this comment, because yeah, that's the way it goes. That's probably a good way to think about your feedback. Okay, ladies, thank you for this amazing conversation. It was wonderful, and thank you to everybody who took a chance to watch this discussion panel. We'll have a short break and we will return with the next topic. So keep in touch. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.